Allow me to begin by warmly thanking the McCain Institute for inviting me to take part in the 5th edition of the Sedona Forum. Your work to honor the memory and the legacy of the late Senator McCain is of personal importance to me and my country. He's fondly remembered as a remarkable human being that Morocco was extremely proud to consider as a true friend and a staunch advocate of the US-Moroccan partnership. In response to your question, I think we can all agree that the year 2020 was like no other, due mainly to the COVID pandemic and its far-reaching, often tragic repercussions the world over. In our region, this comes in addition to what I would call a pre-existing context of complex security and humanitarian challenges undermining the region as a whole. I personally think that against this pessimistic backdrop, it became abundantly clear that the regional status quo does not serve the interests of peace or development for our countries. Thus emerged the diplomatic breakthroughs leading to the Abraham Accords, as well as the reestablishment of diplomatic ties between Morocco and Israel. With regards to Morocco in particular, I think it is important to underline that this resumption of our diplomatic relations comes within a pre-existing relationship initiated in the 1990s. More importantly, this development builds on what I would call a solid foundation of constant exchanges at the social, cultural, and human levels, thanks to the large and vibrant Moroccan Jewish diaspora in Israel and across the world. The agreement signed between the US, Morocco, and Israel last December seeks to build on these solid foundations and also offer an added dimension by including trilateral opportunities of strategic cooperation between our three countries. Over the past weeks and months, I'm proud to announce that we have seen actually a fast implementation of this important agreement. Our diplomatic offices are now open in Rabat and Tel Aviv. High-level virtual meetings took place between various ministers, which have identified important avenues of technical cooperation and means to promote trade and people-to-people exchanges, including through direct flights. Beyond these government efforts, the private sector and civil society have also been closely involved, and this is what I can call a promising sign of the future success of this process. As you know, the history between the kingdom and the Jewish people is quite unique. Let me, if you allow me, explain why. Muslims and Jews have coexisted side by side for centuries in Morocco, with a large Jewish presence dating back 2,000 years. And people tend to forget that. The Jewish population was spared from the horrors of the Holocaust when the late king, His Majesty King Mohammed V, refused to surrender 250,000 Moroccan Jews to the Nazi regime, famously declaring he had no Jewish or Muslim citizens, but only Moroccans. Although only 3,000 Jews still reside in Morocco, it is very much a vibrant community that proudly perpetuates the Hebraic heritage that Morocco has enshrined as part of its national identity in its constitution. His Majesty the King has royal advisors and ambassadors from Moroccan Jewish community and has personally spearheaded the rehabilitation of Jewish religious sites and the preservation of Jewish heritage in Morocco. This commitment to our religious diversity continues to strengthen thanks to the recent decision to include Jewish history in our public school curricula for the first time in the Arab world. And I think that's something important to remember. I think that all the examples I've just mentioned explain why news of the decision to normalize ties with Israel did not actually come as a surprise or shock to people in Morocco. It was not a matter of if, but rather when it would happen. Furthermore, the commitment of Morocco to continue to support the Middle East peace process was also highly welcomed. Regarding the second part of your question, if you allow me, I can say that the economic engagement was not a driving force behind the trilateral agreement, given that there has been trade between our two countries since the 1990s. That being said, the re-establishment of ties between Israel and Morocco has led to considerable interest to boost trade and explore existing economic opportunities from both sides. I'm glad to share that the first Morocco-Israel Business Forum is expected to take place as soon as COVID-related restrictions are eased. I am actually confident that this event and others to come will allow business leaders to identify economic opportunities and potential ventures, such as in the field of renewable energies, agriculture, or technology. Given the deep ties maintained with the diaspora of close to 1 million Israelis of Moroccan heritage, there has been on average, I would say, over 50,000 Israelis visiting Morocco yearly prior to the signing of the agreement. Many come back during religious celebrations to visit the land of their forefathers or the tombs of their ancestors. We have also been witnessing a growing trend of non-Sephardic Jews undertaking pilgrimages of Jewish holy sites in Morocco in recent years. As the only Arab country to have a stable Jewish population with a fully functioning Jewish court system and synagogues across the country, I would say that there has been little adjustment needed. We expect that when the first direct flights are launched, the number of visitors may triple or quadruple. This is welcome news as Morocco seeks to relaunch its tourism sector following a difficult year on lockdown. Our region has witnessed a considerable amount of change in the past decade, marked by increased destabilizing actions undertaken by what I would call non-state actors, violent extremist identities, and separatist groups, as well as growing foreign interference, unfortunately. These actions have undermined the sovereignty and territorial integrity of states, as well as provoked irreparable suffering and humanitarian tragedies. This regrettable situation is further compounded by the negative health and socio-economic impact of the COVID pandemic. There is today a pressing need of synergies and cooperation to address the multidimensional threats facing our region, but also for greater solidarity to overcome the ongoing pandemic and put us back on the path of growth and progress, as we say, inshallah. I have every hope that the Morocco-US-Israel agreement can be a shining example of what we can achieve together for the greater good of the region and in the interest of peace in the world. As an optimist, I firmly believe this. I thank you for the opportunity to engage on this subject.